This is Synchronicity.
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 Welcome to Synchronicity. We got a good guest this week. It's Cory Allen. Should I sing the entire intro? That was just me singing in the intro. Music, I don't think you want to hear me sing just in the intro. That'd be silly. Cory Allen is the guest today. Meditation teacher. Well, let's not call him let's call him mindfulness wizard, basically. He's put in the work. He's put in the man hours so you can get the benefit of his wisdom. And he's really done it. I've known Cory now for 4 or 5 years. Wow, time flies. But I've known from the beginning that this dude's a special guy, and it's lovely and wonderful to see him, all of his dreams starting to come true. They've been coming true, let's be real. But man, just buckle up, guys. You're going to see some cool shit from Cory. I mean, you already have, but really, you'll be like, oh, I get it. I get what Noah was talking about. This conversation is amazing. I'm not going to have a conversation. Listen to this. I should probably edit this out, but I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Michael Donovan was telling me I shouldn't be previewing the episodes before the episode. Why should I be yakking about what's in it? He's probably going to yell at me, that's not what I said, Noah. It's not what I said. I love Michael, but I'm not going to tell you what's in this episode. I already wrote a little description. I will tell you this. Cory has a new book coming out. September 24th is the date. Now is the Way. Go to nowistheway.com to find out more about what is talked about in this episode, which is awesome shit. That's what I'll tell you. It's awesome shit. So go check it out in this episode, nowistheway.com. You also know Cory's website, his podcast, The Astral Hustle. Come on. It's on MindPod Network. Come on. Do you guys ever watch that show, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson on Netflix? That's my favorite show, I think. It's definitely, and Detroiters that Tim Robinson did. Oh, man. Just if you don't know what I'm talking about, go on Netflix, type in, press in, whatever you got to do, Tim Robinson. Just do that, and you're good to go. That's your life has been improved. Imagination stuff, it's the best. I am so happy you guys have been writing in. The success stories now continue to pile in. It's coming from every direction. It's coming from the people who listen to this podcast. It's coming from close friends, acquaintances, people I don't speak to often, but told about this. It's fucking awesome. And I know some of you have written in and been like, listen, it's so inspiring and I love to hear your confidence and belief in how imagination precedes materiality. And thank you for that. And what I want to say to you, people writing in and who believe that, it's your belief ultimately. This is a big theme we talk. I'm previewing the episode. Sorry, Michael Donovan. I'm previewing the episode, but we talk about this, that it's ultimately your decision. The age of the guru is dying. It's virtually dead. If you're putting your faith and belief and trust in something outside of yourself, it just doesn't mean be an asshole, right? It doesn't mean don't listen to other people. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're ultimately putting your power and belief and trust completely in another person, you're bound for disaster. There's no other way around it. And you'll experience it time and time again because you won't understand it's you, silly. It's you. You're doing it. So people like Cory come around who have put in the work, have done the stuff. And man, he now, I feel like when you combined his placidity, his calmness, his clearness, his clarity with the directional way to impregnate your mind with an idea or desire and have it manifest. Oh, God, I used the word manifest, the M word. Blech. When you select your reality the way you want to select it and it unfolds in this world, those two powers combined. Oh, man, super cool. Anyway, rate and review this podcast. Go check out Cory's podcast. the Astral Hustle. It's amazing. And before we get to the episode, can I give a big shout out to the guys at Ned.com? It's HelloNed.com. HelloNed.com. I'm getting better at these ads. It's undeniable. HelloNed.com. Go there. The guys at Ned make the best full spectrum hemp oil. People. You may think I'm bullshitting. I mean, at this point, if you do, I don't know. What are you listening for? I don't bullshit. It's the only CBD oil I've ever used. It's the only CBD oil I ever will use, because unless I make my own, unless they really just like, I get on it and I'm like, listen, I'm going to grow a shitload of hemp. But I'm not going to do that. Let's be real. I'm not going to do that. These guys are. They do it ethically. They do it lovingly. They do it the exact way I would want it to be done if I were doing it myself. So that's why I use it. And I really do use it. You've heard enough of this show, if you have. And when I try to pitch shit I don't use, it does not go well. But I really do love these guys. I love their stuff. Get the full spectrum hemp oil. People ask me what size. I say 750 milliliters. My good friend Matt, he asked me, he said, what do I get? I said, this. Get this. Get the 750 milliliter CBD full spectrum hemp oil. I know I sound like a salesman, but it's just because I think this shit is fucking awesome. So HelloNed.com. If you go there, use the code SYNC, that's sync, 15% off your order. It's pretty cool. So go do that. Those guys are awesome. Go check out the episode if you haven't with them. Rhett and Adrian. They're cool. Okay. Business is done. Intro is done. Things are locking into place. How you feeling? Hopefully good. Imagine your best life. It's imminent. I am telling you, it's imminent. It is on its way. It's coming. Promise you. Hit me up, noah@syncpodcast.com if you want to talk about this stuff. Also, one last thing. I lied. We're not getting to the episode yet. I'm starting doing tarot readings, right? I've been putting up on my Instagram. I have over 1,000 followers now with the shittiest Instagram of all time. However, I'm turning it around. I'm actually putting some value into it, doing some tarot readings. I'm doing free tarot readings for people who want them. The way this works is on Instagram. Hit me up. Tell me, we'll get in touch. I'll say, listen, I'm going to do a 3-card spread. I'll give you some options. You send me your email. I will do a poll for you. I just did this with someone, so I'm just recounting what I just did. I'll do the poll for you. I'll take a picture of it, send it to you on Instagram so you have the picture. Then I will do the reading and I'll email it to you. And that's it. And it's free. I'm not charging for this shit right now. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I really do know what I'm doing, but I don't want to charge yet, right? I really feel I'm at the place to be able to do that. But I do want to help people, and I've been doing it with my friends and family. And then someone just hit me up on Instagram, was like, yo, will you do this? And I was like, yeah, I will do this. No, don't pay me money because I'm not at that point yet. So if you're interested in that, hit me up. I'll do as many as I can. I mean, I don't have unlimited time, but I definitely have time to refine my skills in this regard. That's it. Nowistheway.com. Nowistheway.com. Nowistheway.com is the site for Cory's new book, Now is the Way. He's the best. Go check him out. Without further ado, here is Cory Allen. Yeah, here we go. Okay, sweet. No watermarks, no problems, no time limits. Let's do this shit. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I was thinking right before this or this afternoon, where I looked at my calendar, I was just kind of seeing what was going on today. I looked and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Podcast with Noah today. And I immediately just felt excited because you know what I mean, man? Like, it's nice whenever you know there's going to be just a fun, effortless chat with someone who is with it. You know, it's like just a joy. You know, it's a pleasure. It
is kind of just the best. And like, what's cool is we made this decision probably more unconsciously than consciously to do this as part of our life. And it's just like, it's an undervalued thing that people probably don't think about, like ritualistically building into their lives, but like long, deep, fun conversations with agreements and disagreements are just like, it's the best. There's nothing better than that. So,
Absolutely. And you know what's funny about that is that's actually why I started my podcast, really. Was
really?
like, yeah, because I was always just my whole life pretty much like hanging out, having these type of chats with my friends. And I was like, hey, you know what? Be cool to record these because this is just what I do already. And then, of course, there were some other elements at play, but it's just kind of like taking that thing you're already doing and just making it into something else.
Yeah, man. Well, I will say that same sentiment and feeling gave me the confidence. I don't want to say it's the reason I started it, but it gave me the confidence that I could do this. I was like, I've already had 10 trillion of these conversations like every day of my life. You know, not all of them are recordable worthy, but I know that there's some element of this that is valuable even while we're in the conversations, you know, that people would probably be interested in, lo and behold. And here we are, Cory. So I want to start with a question, though, because we were just talking about this stuff, and we won't mention the specific event and circumstance, but it was something where you're like, oh, man, I'm going to barf. Like I got butterflies in my stomach. And I said, you know, you strike me as someone who doesn't get nervous or kind of like, oh boy, but you described it as something. So tell me what happens for you when something like this is a big thing is looming.
Yeah. So basically I don't get nervous per se. What I get is just this crazy influx of like energy, and not energy in like a, you know, I don't have like it's like literal. I guess I should describe as opposed to describe what it isn't. Let me talk about all the things it's not, and then I'll let you kind of figure out what it isn't or what it is. Yeah, man, I just get this crazy flush of like energy. So, like I even start like my body starts like vibrating, like the whole thing, not like my hands or something, but the whole thing starts like pulsing. And I just get this insane wash of like vibrance where I literally feel like I'm about to burst or something. And but it's not fear based. It's like a ton of like kinetic energy or something like that. And I've kind of wondered before, like, is it you know, perhaps it's source, like some vessel to source dilates because you get plugged into, you know, we're all kind of trying to get plugged into the different conduits of the scaffolding of our future. And if you maybe like make a really big connection and the dam opens up, then it's like wham, you're like rushed with an abundance of source energy, and then you're just like bah. And that would explain how people, not to put a pin in that, but that would explain, just as a side note, like how people, they talk about highly enlightened like gurus and you know, Tibetan monks and shit like that, how they always have an immense amount of energy. And that's kind of, maybe that's somehow connected.
Okay. And not only is it connected, but I mean, my direct experience validates that when you're close to what you're referring to as this dam, right? This dam is all around you. It's kind of this circular, like orb shaped thing that you've built around. And when you really connect with this, you just open it, right? You don't plug it and like get a little hole. You open it and the waters come flushing in. And my contention is this is literally happening to everyone all of the time, and it's becoming more apparent. So there are two ways, and you mentioned it, how to deal with this. One is you feel it, you're like, oh my God, you get all this energy. You don't react from a place of fear. You just sense it, you know, viscerally and emotionally and psychologically, and you're open to it. And you go, oh, this is it. I've built the scaffolding of my future, as you put it, and here it goes. I'm ready. I just did a tarot spread that was talking just about this. But I think what happens for a lot of people is when some big thing is looming, negative or positive, right? That is totally neutral. It actually doesn't matter. Some big scary thing or some big crazy amazing thing can have the same effect. Is a lot of people do tap in to that fear element and get nervous and get worried and get frightened and kind of shift it away. And then you, talking as an individual, anyone listening, you, me, Cory, whatever it is, reacts in a way that then kind of puts the dam back up. And I think a lot of this is figuring out, how do we get rid of the dam in a way that's productive for ourselves and allows us to deal with the influx of energy in a way that really is like positive for ourselves. Because like you are truthfully, if not a master, like one step away from being a master at truthfully like really bringing forth and summoning into your world the stuff that you know is beneficial for you and other people. Like, it's just been plainly obvious since I've known you, and now I think I understand it a little bit better. But I love how you describe, like, no, it's not nervousness. It's just you feel what's coming. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. And also, I think that why people do get nervous in those cases is because the influx of energy is overwhelming and they're not really prepared for it. And so it's scary, which I totally get. You know what I mean? It's like you can, it's just like, you freak out because you're like, holy shit, I'm kind of being possessed by all this feeling right now that I'm not ready to receive.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. And also, you're talking about the dam metaphor. That's one that I like to use in terms of resistance, like art and creativity, because that's why the same thing we're talking about is why we're compelled to create things, is because we get welled up with life. And so we want to express it through music or, visual art or writing or podcast, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so the resistance comes whenever we have the dam kind of on the back end of us where we get our energy from, where life moves into us. And then we have the doorway on the front of us where we can express that energy out. And what happens is whenever we get filled up with that energy of life, we want to create something, then kind of our intellect holds this dam closed in front of us because it recognizes, because that's where the ego is and all this other business, it recognizes that we want to express the thing, this life that we have, because it's passed through us. And so therefore it's like kind of collected some of the atoms and dust and essence of what we are.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to express and put back into the world. But the dam of resistance forms because we're scared to express this part of ourselves. Because if we let out what's in us that has passed through us, then a kind of a fragment or a shard of ourselves goes out into the world. And as it leaves us in the form of something creative, we can no longer protect it or shroud it or anything like that. So it's like a fragment of our ego exists in the universe, in the wild, on its own. And, it can be criticized, it can be damaged, it can be misinterpreted, all that stuff. And so we get this fear, and our ego usually uses kind of the inner critic to really make that dam thick. It's like, no, well, you have no voice, you have no purpose, look how many other artists are out there, all these reasons of why we're not good enough to express the thing. Well, what's crazy, and actually I wrote about this in the book a little bit, because creativity is something that's so important to me. Like, in the way to break through that dam is you just have to crack the dam, right? And like, if you crack the dam, then the whole thing will explode and you'll be able to be creative. But all you have to do is like play the first note, right? So this is in any creative pursuit. If you want to be a musician, if you want to be a writer, a podcaster, whatever, you can like circle around, forever thinking about and percolating on this thing. But that's kind of just resistance talking. Like, you have to just mindlessly reach out and play the first note, mindlessly get on the keyboard and just start typing something, and just get the hands in motion, connect and start that thing feeding forward instead of feeding backwards. And once it does, then you've created a crack in the dam, and then that thing eventually will burst.
Yeah, man, I fucking love this shit. It sounds like to me too what you're referring to as resistance, I refer to at this point as threshold guardians. And ultimately what I say threshold guardians are is just you, right? It's just an internal part of you doing exactly what you're talking about, is trying to protect you. I've been thinking a lot about ego recently, because I know there's so much emphasis for so many people on killing or subduing or silencing or shutting up the ego. And I've come to realize, at least in my own life, that is it's a misapprehension. You want to make friends with your ego. You want to love your ego. If this thing is used lovingly, it's amazing. It's wonderful. And that distinction can be difficult, because how do you know when you're slipping into something that's just selfish and has no benefit? But as you're doing what you're talking about, making these cracks in the dam, you start to realize, like, if you really know who you are and you know what your intentions and aspirations and ethical framework are, you can move fearlessly in the world. And then when you get back to talk what you're talking about with the vulnerability, I had a thought the other day and I tweeted it out and I thought about it more, and something about it made me think of you. I was like, this is a Coryism if I've ever heard one. And it was vulnerability leads to invulnerability. And that has been my direct experience. If you do start taking those pieces of you and creatively expressing them in the world and sharing them and playing that first note, writing that first letter, right? That leads to this amazing sense of, oh my God, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing, whatever it is. And that feeling is that confidence, that invulnerability, that is kind of the catalyst that switches when you totally let the damn waters flood in. Switches you from being afraid of that and overwhelmed in a scared way and switches it to like, oh my God, here we go again. Like the roller coaster at the top of the thing. You're not going to fall to your death. You're about to have an amazing ride. Enjoy it. So I love how you talk about this as resistance and playing that first note, man. You're the best.
Thanks. So are you. And yeah, the vulnerability is, resulting in invulnerability is great because it touches on this notion I think is very true, which is like the old saying, in order to see, you have to be seen. And it's just about like removing that wall from the other and yourself and being open. And when you're wide open, that's whenever you have the most visibility to see everything that's out there, right? And by the process of dilating and becoming wide open, everyone has shit. Everyone has hang-ups and fears and issues and problems and traumas and shortcomings and all that stuff. So it's no big secret, right, that we all have this stuff. But opening up is, in my opinion, it's the beginning of accepting yourself, right? So like we all have like, elements that need work on us. That's just a byproduct of being human.
Yeah, that's why we're fucking here, basically.
Yeah. And so when you're open, you can accept the truth of that and accept yourself. And I think whenever you can do that, it allows you to really see a lot more out in the world.
Well, it allows you to start, if you can start accepting yourself and then start loving yourself, well, guess what, friend? You can start doing that for other people too. Because, and by the law of reversibility here, if you can't do that, you may be able to do it relationally and relatively out in the world, but it's going to be very hard to look out lovingly at everything out there if you're hiding away those aspects of yourself. And this gets into kind of like shadow work, which for me, I've kind of realized over the years that if someone is enthusiastically shouting about love and light constantly and never talks about shadow stuff and never has any kind of like, downside, like aspects of themselves, not that they don't have those now, but haven't dealt with that, I am now immediately somewhat wary, just because it is such an important element of being human to cast light on those things and own them and accept them and love them too. And I think that tension that's created by denying that also creates a tremendous amount of like internal resistance and fear and anxiety. How do you approach looking at darker elements or flaws or shadow elements of yourself? Like, what's your approach to relationally getting in touch with those and resolving or dealing with?
I recognize them in the moment, and then acknowledge it like truthfully to yourself. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's like I've kind of described it like, it's like having your head underwater, and you're kind of drowning. And then only whenever you pull your head up, you're like, oh, right. I was drowning for 20 years.
Yes.
So, but if you don't know that there's an above water, it's kind of hard to pull your head out of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just these slow kind of gradual steps towards the process of, one, like recognizing that you're even having those thoughts and expressing those things or feeling those things to begin with. Like that's step one, because so many people, including myself, past self, will, you get ingratiated into this momentum of kind of running a critical script in your mind. And of course, it's only because like you're an individual is wounded and insecure and feels disconnected and what have you. So by being critical of other people, you kind of place yourself in this imaginary higher hierarchy position. And if you
Yes.
talk shit to other people about someone else, then you create an other. So you like make an instant fake community of hatred that you're connected. It's like a hate tribe,
Yes, that is exactly what it
and
is.
and like I was whenever I was growing up I was like a metalhead, so it was founded on nerdy insecurity and just like being really critical and what have you, and like I just started recognizing like, oh wait a second, like it doesn't feel good whenever someone says something about like that about you,
Right.
and like why am I, it kind of makes it like, wait a second, why am I like putting this out there? Why am I saying these things? Oh, it's because I'm uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like I'm doing it to try and feel comfortable. And then once you sort of recognize that, then the tools of mindfulness really kick in where where then you recognize those things arising and sit and go, oh, okay, here comes, I was about to criticize or say something negative or whatever, and I can stop. I can not do that, and I can choose
Yes.
to author my future in a different way. And by doing that, time and time again, and of course, like it's not this switch where you, okay, from now on, I'm gonna, be perfect, but it's just this gradual process of getting
Yes.
better and better at that. What's amazing about it is that in time, the neuroplasticity of your brain changes. The neural pathways
Yes.
change, and so as you can literally think yourself into a different future, a different reality, because by choosing to not express critical thoughts and critical ideas and so forth, and being more positive, being more constructive, and being just more compassionate. And generally, it's kind of is hallmark of a term as that is. Being less of an asshole. How about, let's put it that
That's
way.
a really good way of putting it. That's how I
Yeah.
like to put it.
then like over time your brain literally grows into that different shape, and those negative critical arising thoughts, they actually stop arising.
Yes.
Like as often, and it goes from having one every 10 minutes to having one every 10 hours to having one every 20 hours to having one every 50 hours. And then what happens whenever your brain begins operating and literally the electricity is flowing in a different direction,
Yes.
is that when you use that same brain to look at the rest of the world is a completely different place. It's not a scary place that's trying to, has a bunch of dark corners and things that need to be dressed down and things that are out to get you and what have you, and things that are against you. It becomes a place of wonder and a place of beauty. I was joking recently about like this neural shift that I was talking about. Even when sitting in the awe of existence, whenever you really can start to marinate in that awe of being, you're a good way to tell if your mind is shifted is if you're in your house and you see a spider, and in the past you would have been like, oh, a spider, I better like
Yes.
get it out of the house. And then one day you look at it and you go, oh, whoa, cool, a spider. Like, look how complex and interesting that thing is. I'm gonna like still pick it up with a little piece of paper and like throw it out the front door, but it goes from the fear of the unknown to the other to the wonderment of the other.
This happened to me with wasps and all sorts of bugs that I used to be terrified of as I started doing what you're talking about. And what you're saying here, I would just say with the wasps, I am not afraid of these things anymore. I do exactly what you say. What I started doing, Cory, is rather than just getting the piece of paper and the cup thing, I just open the door and like go out, and you'd be surprised how many times this motherfucker just goes out. I don't have to do this whole rigmarole thing.
Right.
But I mean, what you're talking about here with these neural pathways, and I'm acutely aware of this stuff, is to me a physical representation and equally as valid and totally valid of this principle of consciousness preceding materiality or awareness or imagination or whatever people want to call it. Right? These neural pathways aren't adding anything to our brain. It's just being reshaped, right? So in essence, it's always been there. It's not some like we put this thing on us and then it builds this new structure and it's like this. They've always been there. And I think it's fascinating how you talk about as you change your world, right? And your mind physically, your brain physically, as you cast your gaze out in the world, you also change it. And to me, this again confirms and conforms to the idea that as you change your state of consciousness, the world literally changes from your perspective and then creates and affects change. And you can look at this from a bridge of incidents type of way that, you know, you're thinking differently, therefore maybe you see different opportunities, therefore you do a different thing, the whole butterfly effect thing. But regardless of the mechanism and how you want to view it, it's undeniable as you do this, as you become more aware of your thoughts, your ideas, your emotions, and exercise more discipline and self-control, you then be able to get to shape this world and your life in the way you want to, rather than subscribing to this idea that it's just chaos and who knows why the fuck anything happens and look out there, it's all horrible. How could anyone believe there's anything good? And that shift from that, oh my God, I'm just this leaf getting blown around, to I'm a leaf, but I'm also the fucking tree. Like that is the catalyst for really starting to like live your life. And that's, I know what you do and you encourage other people to do, man. It's, again, like I said, I'll end every fucking time I talk with, you're the coolest. Man, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it is true, I believe, that the universe is self-organizing, right? And you could call that chaos. It's just the complexity of all things are resonating. So it's like just waves of resonance flowing, like all of, like, we think the ocean is the only place where there's this fluidity of motion happening, right? But it's like, it's happening on like an atomic level, like in every dimension. It's just flowing these waves of resonance in all directions everywhere. And when you realize like, okay, I'm nested within that. Okay. I'm like a content amongst all these waves of flowing resonance. You can get blown around. Like if you're the leaf, you can get blown around because it's a party out there. Like it's going crazy. But you can start to like put up a sail if you change your mind, because our minds are also naturally in that same self-organizing state, because it's just it's grown out of the universe, right? And so whenever you can begin to shape your mind and create some kind of partitions and some structure for the way that you're looking and operating amongst the self-organizing circumstances, that's whenever you can, in my opinion, start to author your future a bit more and really guide this thing. That's how you put up the sail on the sailboat. It's like, well, you're still in the ocean, but you've got a sail now. And you'll get a lot closer to where you want to go if you have a sail, as opposed to if you don't.
You can Moana your way to distant places. It's the thing to do. Dude, I really love, again, that metaphor of putting up the sail, because that is what we all need to do. Because like, here's when I hear the universe now, I have a weird reaction to it. So I've, the Neville Goddard thing, I've been sucked deeply into the vortex and rabbit hole, but he has this test and I fucking love it. He says, if you hear God, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, the universe, source, and you think of anything outside of you, you failed the fucking test. But if you hear those things and recognize it's you, and this again doesn't invalidate the external reality of those things if you want to believe in them, but you're pulling it and projecting it from within you out in the world. So whenever I hear things like the universe and you start describing it as a self-organizing, entity, I'm like, oh man, this is exactly what people do. This is what everyone is doing. The macros and the micro, right? As within, so without. I love this stuff, because when you kind of zoom in and zoom out, right? Macro and microscope this stuff, when you are hearing truthful things, it always works on every level. That's like a really good barometer if you want to know if there's some law that's going to hold up, or there's some wisdom that's going to hold up. Like, apply it not only externally, but internally. And if it still holds up, that's some good shit. Maybe bounce that around, because that is what this is. So yeah, when you say universe and self-organizing kind of entity, and it's chaotic and it's all these things, this to me is describing people. And I do believe through the tools of mindfulness, imaginal techniques, plant medicine, yoga, whatever it is, whatever works for people. If you can really grok this shit, you do author your own future. You don't micromanage it like a weirdo, but you get the big events. You know the future version of you, or know who you are now that's going to be expressed in the future, and you just do it. So a question I have for you is this. You deal with we both have podcasts. You get all the questions I get and more, I'm sure. There's different stages where people start approaching concepts like mindfulness or, taking control over at least your own mind. If you were talking to a beginner, if someone who, let's say it's a 5-year-old, how would you explain the concept of mindfulness or the things that you're doing that have helped you? Like what would that look like? A 5-year-old's explanation. Just pretend I'm a 5-year-old.
All right. I think first, like, it's good to actually, as opposed to try and describe a concept to a 5-year-old, I would set them up to just feel it first.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
So like with a 5-year-old, and this is purely hypothetical because I don't know any 5-year-olds. So I would just have them sit like, hey, okay, so wait till they're not like full of energy and freaking out. Wait till they're in a more, calm, docile state where their attention's a bit more dialed in.
Yeah.
And then you can get them, hey, like, check this out. We're going to play this fun game. Like, it's called like the sitting game. So we're going to sit down on the couch together and we're going to see if we can just go limp, right? So go limp and just relax everything. And then they'll probably laugh. And I'll say, now close your eyes. And they'll say, okay. It's like, now, and what I want you to do is start just kind of like taking good breaths in and out, right? And they're like, all right. And then I'm like, now, what are you thinking about? And they'll say, oh, bananas or whatever. And then I'll say, cool, bananas. That's a fun thought. Yeah. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, what are you thinking about now? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, cars. Like, yeah, cool. What kind of car? What's it look like? And just kind of get them to draw this link between their actual imagination and the ideas that are going through their head and then in reality, right? And then you can draw that over to like, hey, well, whenever you're feeling like you want to like do one thing, I don't know what it would be, like, or if you want to like hit your brother or something like that.
How about not take a bath?
Okay. yeah. All right. Are you dealing with that right now?
No, I'm not. I've resolved that, but it is a common
Good.
issue.
So you could say, you're how you like, why don't you want to take a bath? And they'll say, because it's I don't like it. Like,
yep.
No, but it's like, yeah, well, you don't like it, but it's actually pretty fun. Like if you don't think about it as a bath, like think about it like water, and kind of just start to get them into this zone where they're actually thinking about like in the curious wonder switch, as opposed to the like kind of individuating type of way of thinking. But really, ultimately, to circle back around to the beginning, for a little kid or even for an adult, getting someone to just relax their body, start taking some good breaths, because then you're actually like building an empty internal space, and that space inside of you is what is the first step that's needed to begin to respond to your life instead of react to it.
Right.
So you're trying to build in this little cushion between just this compulsive way of living, and you're like, it's the first thread of impulse control. So that's really, I don't know, I think that's the way to go.
That's a real, the space concept is, I think, probably the key element there, because when you, as someone who, I like how you said past self, because that's, sometimes when people say like, I'm like this or I'm like that, sometimes you're not like that going forward. Sometimes you do make those structural changes and your neural pathways revert to something, or don't revert back to how they were, but turn into something different. So I like how you said the past self. I used to get really, really angry and frustrated about anything from trivial to, actually potentially quote unquote worthy of getting angry about. And the common denominator while I was in a state of anger or rage is that I could not get a millisecond of conscious space to pull myself out of it. It was this self-perpetuating, nonstop kind of collapsing into anger state. And space literally is the thing, however you can achieve it, whatever modality, technique you need to use to get that space is the first step. You literally cannot change it because you will be caught in this state of consciousness and stuck there by its power and its resonance. And these things can be very powerful. And it makes me think about something I was trying to figure out a nice way to tweet it. I don't remember if I did, but again, I know you can relate to this. I was thinking about the concept of space in relation to music and how it's often overlooked by a casual listener because you think about the elements of a song, you think about the instruments and the melody and the harmony and the singing and the structure and all of those things, but the space is often in some of the best songs ever one of the most powerful elements, whether it's sonic spaced in the sound spectrum, or it's spacing between rhythmic elements, or it's just room for things to kind of breathe, or just full stops and then it starts again. Like, we don't think about it very often because it seems like negative space, like it's not actually a thing there, but it gives life and it allows the other elements to thrive because it's providing this like counterbalance, which we need when we are constantly getting bombarded with external input from our senses, and internally we need to be able to have that to function. And I just think it's this very, very cool kind of, I don't want to call it concept. It's an aspect of life and kind of interior and exterior life that I think is very, very powerful.
Yeah. Now you're really speaking my language.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So that notion of negative space in music is something I've thought about a lot for a long time. And actually about probably 10 years ago or something, I realized I wanted to name this album, and I was like trying to find a word that described what you were just talking about in music. And I did a lot of research and I was trying to find it. And what I found was that there's no word in the English language. Literally, there isn't a word that defines a space without anything in it. And I found that because in Japanese, there's the word mu, like mu, which that's what that means. It means like a space that isn't filled, but there's a negative space. And it's really, anyway, the term I ended up coming to, or applying to it, the English term was still, which that makes a lot of sense. But as far as what's transpired in the language and lexicon since then, I kind of just now realized I was talking about stillness without even realizing.
Yes. I just heard it when you said it too. I was like, oh, stillness, of course.
And what's interesting is that, like, they say, but it is a fact that the way that we use language and the way that our linguistic terms identify and represent different things in life dictates a large part of the way that we actually think and see the world, because we've got these symbolic templates that we put over everything. That's why, of course, culturally, people from one place that speak one language, not only is just the culture itself has a different way of relating to things, but the very language just completely changes everything.
Yes.
And people who are bilingual or multilingual, you'll see, have a very unique perspective on a lot of things because they can think about all of life in a different symbolic way. And
So
you see
true.
the biggest disconnect between ideogrammic and alphabetic languages, like Chinese, Korean,
Yes.
Japanese, etc. Those are all like symbols, so think of using symbols that kind of go together and create concepts, as opposed to alphabetic languages, which is more like a math equation. It's like, this means this, and this is like, it's got this, like, Western language, alphabetic language has this finiteness to it.
Yes.
in its like creation, its definition, where it's like, this means this. And I think I'm kind of like, I got this from Ernest Fenollosa, but like part of it's kind of like or Ezra Pound, his kind of when he was one of the first Westerners to translate a lot of ideogrammic texts of Confucius and things like that. But an interesting thing is that, like, inherently in our language and our way of talking about the world, it isn't made apparent that we're speaking on an impression of what that concept is. it's actually the opposite. It's made to this means this.
Yes.
And that full stop, you know. But in Eastern languages, it's very much like, well, these are symbols that represent this, and so the idea of subjectivity is sewn into those ideas. And so, if you apply that to the way that Westerners see life, it's interesting, right? It traps us in our own way of seeing the world as quote unquote truth and real, and it makes it very hard to realize that what we're experiencing is temporary, not in the sense of lifespan, but in the sense of emotional state or attitude or whatever like that. So getting back to the stillness, getting back to that negative space in your life, like you can continually change the way and evolve the way that you're seeing the world. But most people are living these programmed sequences, right? It's really weird. If you ever stop
of syntax, Cory, of syntax. Exactly.
Like if you sit back and you think like, what were the last like 10 like moods or vibes I was in? Like, oh, I was angry about this thing, and I was frustrated about this thing, and excited about this thing, and then feeling like hopeless about this thing, and then energized about this thing. It's like, who pressed play on all those program scripts? Like, what was happening? Like, you're possessed by the like inference and reinforcement of your past and your history, right? And your culture. You know, if you realize that, like, why is my brain like running these little syncopated program scripts? Do you realize that you're just like, you kind of just have your face pressed up against the dashboard in your car all of your life, and you're never like, okay, let me just back up a bit, take a breath, and actually start using the steering wheel a little bit. You know,
it's so true, dude. You're touching on some really deep and profound stuff here with this West and East pictographic, image display of language and alphabetical. And this is, anything I'm about to say, if it sounds pejorative towards either the West or the East, that is not my intent. But I do want to point out some interesting things that I think can be validated through anyone's direct experience, which is if you go in your mind right now, either as a mindfulness exercise or an imaginal act, and you imagine something, chances are there's a very high chance that you are going to see something rather than see the letters of what you are imagining and the words of what you're imagining, right? If you're thinking about writing something, maybe you see the words. And I think that speaks to a very powerful aspect of our consciousness and our minds, which is we don't see in language. Language is something that has sprouted out of the precursor to it, which is our minds, imagination, consciousness. It doesn't mean that it's lesser than. And this is a really key distinction that I think I need to emphasize more when I talk about imaginal stuff is if I'm saying imagination precedes materiality or consciousness does, I am not invalidating materiality. We fucking live here. Like we deal with this shit every fucking day, literally. So to deny it is foolhardy and doesn't make a lot of sense. But it does speak to me that, like, I just started getting into the I Ching, right? I could never fucking understand the I Ching ever. I'm just like, I don't get it. I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I get these concepts, kinda. But when I really started delving more into myself, I start to see how these pictographs and these icons move with the concepts and these stories and the interpretations, and they kind of form this holistic whole of which we can then enter and approach in our own way. Whereas exactly what you're talking about with language or alphabetical is you're literally, this is the beginning of the line, this is the end of the line. The syntax is laid out and the meaning is embedded in it. Now, there may be something underneath it, but it is a different way of approaching not only the world, but our own minds. And I don't want to say it's limiting. I think in tandem, you have an amazing kind of bridge building opportunity between the conscious and unconscious aspects of ourselves. But it is interesting that when we go into our internal spaces, very rarely do we think of the letters or the maps of what we're actually speaking with or writing with or understanding, but we go into this kind of visual or audio or, any other olfactory senses, that could potentially show us what's going on internally. I just think there's something there that's worth exploring in the future too, because I've never thought about that, dude. It's such an interesting perspective on language and how we view the world.
Yeah, I think that language is kind of downstream of a lot of the other stuff you were talking about. It's kind of like the the geometric filter you put on the end of a Play-Doh machine to kind of squirt out the shape of what you're trying to express.
Yes.
And
So good.
that's why I very much like the idea, which we might have talked about before, but the notion of like Suzuki talks about intuition being a form of enlightenment, but not intuition as in like in System 1 mind, but intuition as in like the arising. Like what's the deepest you can be aware of what's arising in your mind. And the more that you can just actually hear that and not change and manipulate it after it flows through your intellectual mind and then out into the world through language or whatever, the more you'll get tapped into, your I hate the your truth, but like actually what you're thinking, actually what's arising, because the brain is so weird, right? Like the brain is on our side. And it's always trying to get itself to realize things, which is so fucking weird.
So weird, right? That's such a weird thing.
So it's like, hey, here's this funky ass symbol that I'm going to try and translate to you, this like image or concept, whatever. And then it's like almost like a game it's playing with itself. It's like, now let's see if I can recognize this. Wait a second. Is our brain actually God? Because the idea of like God is actually like sleeping, playing a joke on itself, trying to get itself to realize that it's made itself dream so that it can wake up. And
that's what's going on, Corey. That's what's fucking going on.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
Be.
Here's the thing, dude. This is how I've been rephrasing what you're saying. Is I say life is a symphony of synchronicities, and you're the conductor. And the song you're conducting is one to wake yourself up to who you really are. I've just settled on it because that's when you know this. When you really start getting into the intuitive realms like Suzuki talks about, not only is it hilarious how the things in this world work, not only is it insane how the synchronicities just cascade upon each other and things you couldn't even possibly consciously devise line up in a way that's so utterly perfect. Just everything conspires, and you realize for your whole life, this is essentially what you've been trying to communicate to yourself. And this seems like an abstract concept until it's experienced directly. But when you experience directly and recognize it and stabilize it, I'm telling you, man, your whole theory, I don't think God did kill himself, right? To be us. It's true. Right. It's true. It's really true. I don't know if the gun was involved, but I think what the motivation was is we have this omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing, all-everything being, right? This unity consciousness, and it starts creating stuff because it wants to play with some shit, right? And it makes humans, and it gets to humans, and it goes, oh my God, I love these things. They're the best, but they're not real because I know I made them, and they're just these toys and dolls. So you know what I got to do to make them real? I got to die into them, and I'll play this game where as I die into them because I love them so much, I'll constantly remind myself and wake myself up as them to who I really am. And you don't just, as you realize this, go into a puff of nothingness and you're dead and you become God. You're still fucking you. This is why the Rastafarians think, man. That's why they say I and I, because they use ganja, they use weed as the sacrament to remind themselves that I am, this sense of I am, that's God. It's also you, but it's both. Now, to accept that as a person who has been told they're a limited thing in a limited world that is designed to kind of hinder and hurt them is a big leap of faith that people need to make. But luckily, there are people like you, man, who are fucking giving people the little doses they need to get into this place. And then if they want to go fucking jump in the deep end, you can do that with them too. It's amazing, man. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, it is. I like that idea. Yeah, I like that. I mean, even though it sounds
it sounds so batshit woo woo. I know, I love it.
Sounds off the deep end, but it makes a lot of sense.
I know, weirdly it does. Unfortunately, listen, man, I'm fucking reading Bible verses now. I mean, it's just like shit gets way weirder than you can possibly imagine when you delve into kind of this mystic, intuitive state. But the Campbell quote I always think of when we talk about this stuff is the same waters that, the psychotic drowns in, the mystic swims in with delight. And that's really the truth of it. And luckily, like, you did this shit. You're doing this stuff where you get to swim. You got a floaty if you want, man. You got one with the beer holder. You know what I mean? You're just chilling with the sunglasses on. And like, that's like, you can jump in, jump back out. And that really, to me, It's like, that's the name of the game. I'm telling you, these waters, these psychic, you see this, these psychic and unconscious waters are flooding this realm right now. And it's affecting people in a myriad amount of ways. But one of the main ones is stress, fear, anxiety, doubt, depression, all of these things that just prevent people from stepping into who they really are and their power. And anything that can help with this stuff is incredibly important. And one last note, like, I just want to say this, like, a lot of people think this is the Kali Yuga. You know, they come from the Eastern philosophy, and that's the Yuga where everything is going down, 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 the lake of fire. There's no one can meditate, no one can do anything. Shit's, the light's going out. It's the worst. Someone who I really admire is Sri Yukteswar, who is Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, and he calculated these yugas, these long time cycles, and said, no, my friends, we're in the Dwapara Yuga, and this is the age where light and consciousness and all of these wonderful things slowly emerge. They don't happen all at once. It's not an enlightened Shambhala right away, but what it is a slow emergence and remembrance. And these cycles, by the way, last like 860,000 years. So we're, I think, at the beginning stages of this, and a testament to that is the voices that are beginning to emerge and rise to the top above the cacophony of reactivity and polarity. And like, I'm telling you, dude, like, when I tell you that I knew from the time we met that big shit was happening for you specifically, like, now I understand why. Like, I knew it and I felt it, but I didn't understand. But now, like, I see who you are, and it's the coolest fucking thing, man. It's the coolest. It really is.
Thank you. Could you please tell me who it is?
God, my friend. I mean, you know what you're doing. Like, the truth is like, you know what your intentions are, you know what your aspirations are, and you know what your ethical framework is. And to have those things known at any point in your life, that's essentially the key. That will unlock any door you want. And you're already there. You're doing it. It's going to be amazing to watch it continue to unfold. But I mean, like, you know exactly who you are. Don't be coy.
I'm being Cory.
Yeah, Cory. You're being Cory. Yeah, exactly.
It's a fun game to play, Cory. Yeah, man, that's a huge part of like something that is often, I think, overlooked because of, I don't know, I think that the way society, like American society has evolved has really kind of made it something that people don't focus on as much or think about. But like, man, integrity and like that moral code you were talking about is so crucial to like happiness, and also just to like a long-term framework of success for you and the people around you. Like to like not only have people count on you, but to be able to count on yourself.
Yes. To
act right and be right. To all the stuff that you might think, and that's one of the big parts of like the book is building a bridge from knowing to doing. Like you can think about Ram Dass quotes all day, but until you actually are doing those and living that, then you haven't really put a foot in yet. But man, whenever it's really bizarre, it's like you just have to make an agreement with yourself.
Yes, that's exactly what it is, dude.
Because I did that one time, like, or many times really, but like there was a big one where it was like, okay, like I'm literally talking to myself right now, just alone, being like, all right, I'm going to like this, and this, no more this, and this is the way it will be, and I will never stray from this. And I even put a little pepper on it where I was like, and if I do, let all of the shit from here forth that has built up unfold.
Oh, you're a crazy motherfucker, dude. Holy shit. Kudos to you, friend. That is the true sacrificial self. You just psychically murdered the limited version of yourself with that one. Congrats. Yeah. Hallelujah. Jesus.
It's the only way it works. Like you have to raise the stakes.
You do. It's so true. It's so true.
But what's funny is it sounds like a sacrifice, but it's actually, you're doing yourself the greatest gift and goodness and kindness that you can do.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You know what I mean?
That's what it is, man. That's Jesus Christ. That's what people think about it, as a person who sacrificed himself, but it's a resurrection to who you are. And the way you do it is by sacrificing yourself, the limited versions of yourself, the versions that aren't there to serve what you're really supposed to be doing. You want, when you're around, and I'm speaking to everyone who's listening, but you, Cory, me, everyone, we want when we walk into a room to be able to help every single person there. Not in an egocentrical, like, hey, I'm the best, look at me way, but we want just by our presence to make people feel a little bit better about themselves. So wake up to who they really are. And that shit, my friend, is the best. There's no nobler intention of that. And when you make that agreement with yourself that that's who you're going to be, and it expresses itself and it unfolds out in the world, that's the point of being here, period. Like, that's what we are here for, and that's what we're here to do. Every single person in their own individual, unique way will do this. I mean, this is, my conception of death is shifted quite a bit, you know, from just a few months ago, because I can safely say, listen, I have no fear of death. But my understanding of what this world is, and knowing that it's not just a narrative I'm using to pacify myself or a fear for where fear is, but my knowingness of what it is means, like, just do what you fucking gotta do. Make those agreements and start doing it. And I love that, man. Like, dude, we've skirted around it. We beat around the bush. Your book, dude, it's coming out. It's imminent. It's arrival. It's birth into the world.
Yeah.
What is, tell people this amazing thing that's about to happen to them.
Yeah, well, I hope that it's about to happen to them, and it can if they'd like it to. But ultimately, you know, I wrote a book because people are suffering, and people are anxious, people are feeling lonely, they're feeling overwhelmed and just fragmented, right? And that's because technology has become so hyper evolved so fast, and the pacing of life has gotten just really out of control. So there's all these elements, everything's stealing our attention, stealing our focus, stealing our time, pulling us further away from ourselves. And so many people are living lives where they feel like they don't have any control of their future. They feel like they're feeling more anxious and more disconnected from themselves than ever. But that's not a way that you have to live, right? And so I recognize that because I lived through and basically spent the last few decades deconstructing my own suffering and figuring out ways to get on the other side of those negative, you know, those feelings, those negative challenges and so forth. And now is the way, is the guide that I wrote, the handbook, you know, of how I did that. And as I think it's been highlighted probably on this specific podcast episode, but I want like real things for people. I don't want someone to read something and feel good about it and then just go back into their life and face the same shit again.
Yeah.
I want them to really find these methods and tactics and tools to shape their future lives. And what's interesting about it is that on, you know, being in the position of having a podcast like yourself, whenever I started talking about some of the things I'd experienced and how I got over them, or got through them rather, whenever I was starting the podcast, is that listeners started hitting me up and saying like, hey, the thing that you mentioned, like that was like a key turning in my brain. And it totally was this aha moment where I had this insight that it solved this thing I've been dealing with for years,
yes,
in some cases. And I began kind of observing those things. And I realized that one, that these things I lived through didn't only have to do with me, that there were like universal human experiences and challenges that we all face. And two, I was able to see which ones are really common, like which ones are just shit that everyone deals with in life in one way at one time or another.
Yes.
And so I put all of that into the book and made it, as I mentioned before, really built a bridge from knowing to doing. And in a funny way, I actually modeled the book almost like a business book or something like that, because it literally is like, it defines what the present moment is, because people don't really do that.
Yeah.
Like I literally talk about it. Then I define how we get lost and fragmented and caught up in the momentum of distraction, which is what I call it in the book. And then how to reel it back in, how to get out of those snares of disconnectedness, and how to get back to yourself, back to your breath, increase your awareness, feel more connected. And then the second part is the how section, which is like that's the actionable section. And you got a part called 12 Ways to Now, which are 12 distinct principles, which if you put even a single one into your life, you're going to feel a big difference, right? It's all these ways these things you can do, principles to live by, that will help you experience the abundance of life and a massive increase in your self-awareness and connectivity, and ultimately, like I mentioned earlier, ability to author your future. And then I do give a short section on meditation, but just wipe away all of the jargon and bullshit and Laffy Taffy, and get straight to a crystal clear method of meditation practice that anyone can stick to.
Man, I love it. I like that you have 12. You're 12 disciples. You're 12 apostles. There's symbolism everywhere, my friend. Dude, I mean, like, I don't have to endorse it on this podcast, but I will. But anyone, if you want the thing that will prepare you to be able to use anything I'm yakking about with the imagination, you got to do Cory's stuff. You have to find something that will let your mind, your analytical, rational mind, understand that this is for its benefit. It's for everyone's benefit inside of you and around you. Discipline yourself, understand these things, get to the baseline level. I'm good, I'm okay. And then exactly like you're saying with the 12 things, like, do it. Then start being the person you're supposed to be. Then stop, judging and looking out in the world and finding reasons that there are things wrong with other people or yourself, and start doing the shit that you need to do. And then guess what happens when we all start doing this? Think what happens to the world. Oh my God. Not so bad after all, because people are finally not just putting their shit outside because they don't understand how this stuff works.
Right. Right, man. And thank you for all of the kind words. I'm grateful for that.
Pleasure.
And just to really kick it off the side of the deep end.
Yeah.
All of what you're talking about imagine if all of us lived in this way, right? So if your idea of each human mind being the fragments of an original God mind or something like that, and it's trying to wake itself back up individually within each of us to recognize itself so that it can play the game again, right? I had a massive visualization one time during it while I was in the Amazon, and that was that the purpose of human life was that each of us were basically, we probably have talked about this, but it was basically the source looked like a river of neon mandalas.
You get it, my friend.
And that a line of that code would dispatch and come into like the human container, and it would we'd live our lives, and after we were done, we were like working on refining that code, and then after we're done, that line of mandala code would return to the source, and that the point of existence was to refine the cosmic mathematics of the universe. And so perhaps what you're saying, perhaps the God that has dispersed itself into human form is trying to wake itself up and recognize itself again, is now then being reformed. And that's what I saw was the reformation of the Godhead.
I believe that lines up perfectly with the Dwapara Yuga idea of what we're doing and experiencing in linear time right now. Man, this has been an amazing conversation. So let's end with the 3 questions. Let's see if they've shifted.
Cool.
First things first, let me ask you. Sorry, I was getting a call right then.
No problem.
What's your favorite color?
Clear.
Clear. God, you're the best. What's your favorite number?
Well, right now, I'm going to have to say it's 22.
Why 22?
Because it's the day of my birthday, and I've just always had this weird synchronicity with 22, or even 222.
Oh, dude, I see that shit fucking all the time.
My birthday is February 22nd.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it was imprinted into me, but I see it constantly.
Something very powerful with that. Favorite animal?
My dog. But outside of any personal relationship, let's see. I really, I like, I've had a good relationship with these Icelandic horses.
Ooh. Oh, because you were just in Iceland not too long ago, right?
Yeah, I went there a few times over the last year and a half. And they're special little creatures.
Are they like unicorns without the horns?
Essentially, it's funny you say that because they're a different breed, like a different species of horse.
Right.
And if one leaves the country, it actually can't come back,
Right,
because
it's an
they
island,
preserve and conserve the breed. Also, what's funny that you said that they have these like 80s like mod haircuts that are super
perfect.
fancy. But I did see this one horse that was white, and it looked pregnant, so it had like a huge belly, but it was like pure white, had its hair all swooped over to the side, and like had its mouth hanging open. And I was like, that looks like an unemployed unicorn. I actually took a picture of it. I'll find it and text it to you. So I saw an unemployed unicorn.
That is amazing. That's even rarer than just seeing a unicorn because they usually have jobs. Dude.
Hard times.
Yeah. Last question. What's a practical tip? Well, this whole episode is filled with them, but what's a practical tip that has helped you in your life that you could share with people listening?
Oh, think of a really good one. You are free to think and be whoever you want to be. You just have to believe and understand that your mind is actually the freest place and the place of where all potential for everything, for infinite love, for creating the physical success that you want to see in the world, for creating every change you want. You just have to recognize the fact that you can be whoever and whatever you want if you just believe it to be so.
Best answer of any person who has ever answered. I'm not even saying that in any other reason that it is officially. That's like Neville Goddard speaking, dude. That's literally like that. You are in the motherfucking flow. Everyone listen to that again. Let's try to time this out 30 seconds so they can hit 2 taps of the 15 to go right back and listen to it. Because honestly, man, that's life right there. That is our life. That is our existence in this realm, in this reality. You can't get better than that. Cory, if people want to find out more about you, what's the best way they can do that?
They could go to nowistheway.com, and then they'll also be able to find my website through that page.
Amazing. Cory, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to that episode. Cory is the best. Go check him out on his website, cory-allen.com. His book, Now is the Way. Go to nowistheway.com. It's out September 24th. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. I have a copy because I'm in the in group, guys. No, but seriously, go check it out. It's Cory's, you got it. You listened. You're here. You get it. Cory's the best. Tune in, The Astros, all his podcasts, other podcasts on MindPod Network. Go check it out. Go check out Michael Donovan's Walking Home. Michael. Very cool guy. There's a lot of Michaels on MindPod Network. Check out Donovan this week. Tarot stuff. Listen, if you're in, this is deep already. Hit me up for the tarot stuff. I really like doing it. I think it helps people and it's free, right? Soon you'll be like, oh man, he's charging so much. What a fucking dick. But I'll be good by then, and I'll be able to charge that much. Right now, it's free. I'm still really good, but I don't want to charge yet. I want to get more under my belt. And then I'll use you as a testimonial. Oh, it's my whole marketing funnel for tarot. No, I'm just kidding. It's fun, though. I like doing it. That's it. I will see you soon. That's what I'm going to have to start saying, because I don't know when. Days, a week, who knows? Probably days. But I will see you soon. Until then, happy imagining. Be the best version of yourself. And I love you. Bye-bye.